This is FightFans Radio.
Let's get ready to rumble! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
It's time!
You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AtomCombatSports.com and FightFans Radio. It is another episode of The Low Blow Radio on FightFans Radio, USCombatSports.com, SouthwestFight.com, and FightFans Radio. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Jorge Hernandez. What's up, man? How's it going?
Hey, man, how you doing? Pretty good. A little slower week this week, but eventually this is about to go off.
Yeah, man, thank goodness. Last week, it was just the MMA world just completely got turned on its head. I'm glad this week we can kind of relax and not worry about any major events, because usually when September starts, there's an event every single week within MMA or boxing. So it's just good we get at least 1 week where we can just kind of digest everything before we get on this crazy ride.
We were all so mature a week ago.
Absolutely.
Hey, quick, before we start, man.
Yeah, what's up?
Just listening to our intro there, did you hear about Bruce Buffer changing his little catchphrase?
I did. That was pretty bizarre. He didn't really give a reason as to why he changed it to It's Fight Time. If you guys didn't hear about it, I think it all started at the latest UFC on Fox card, where Bruce Buffer changed his signature catchphrase from It's Time to It's Fight Time. So kind of bizarre there.
How do you feel about that?
It's kind of weird. I wish he gave more of an explanation as to why he changed it, but it's kind of one of those little things that hardcore MMA fans will go on to UG and just write endless threads, and there'll be endless jokes about it. So I don't think it's anything to kind of be too concerned about.
What would be your catchphrase if you had one, Jay?
Oh man, I don't know if I'm that creative enough.
I'd go Howard Dean on everybody and just get everyone amped, man.
Just keep yelling, just yell for no reason. Well, we're on Fight Fans Radio. You can get in contact with them through Facebook, through facebook.com/FightFansRadio. Also through Twitter, through @FightFansRadio, youtube.com/FightFansRadio, and ustream.tv/channel/FightFansRadio that has all the latest shows. We're on a really awesome radio network. Everything covering Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, really in-depth MMA discussions, really great guests. So please check out all the shows on the Fight Fans Radio Network. And we're also on Stitcher, so the individual shows are on Stitcher, and the live channel of Fight Fans Radio is also on Stitcher. It's available through mobile devices, through Android and iPhone. So please check that out. Our email is lowblow505@gmail.com. We're also available through Twitter and on Facebook. So if you have any questions, complaints, if you hate me like Jorge, vice versa, if you just want to shout out New Mexico, if you hate New Mexico, we'll take any kind of comments at all. So please give us your feedback. So, man, let's start the standing 8 count and break down the 8 most important MMA and boxing stories in New Mexico and around the world. So let's start with... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, number one, especially here around our neck of the woods, there's a little battle going on that probably the rest of the country doesn't know of, but between Colorado and New Mexico, that's going down this weekend in Pueblo, Colorado, at the Pueblo Convention Center. You got a few notable local fighters out of the Albuquerque area in Brandy Montoya, who's quickly becoming one of the top female boxers here out of the town. Jesus Correa Jr., who trains with Fidel Maldonado, a top prospect here in Albuquerque, is in there. And then the siblings, Amanda and Arturo Crespin, very popular family that boxes here out of the central New Mexico area. They'll be fighting out there. The card is very interesting because Brandy's opponent, they're actually the main event. Her name is Chantel Cordova. Chantel's mother is actually the promoter of this event. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this lines up. And they're doing it big for Brandy. They're flying her out to Denver, and they're driving her down to Pueblo. Interesting story behind this, though. Brandy's going to be driven down by Chantel's mother, the promoter of the event. So that might be a little weird thing, and we got something up, got a story up on swfight.com on Southwest Fight News that you guys might want to check out. We got a video interview with her, so definitely something worth checking out if you're in the northern New Mexico or even southern Colorado area.
No doubt. Also in women's fighting news, Sarah Kaufman, she's getting right back in the cage. She said she's pretty embarrassed by her performance against Ronda Rousey. She's back in Invicta. She's going to be taking on Caitlin Young October 6th in Kansas City. It should be in a very exciting fight, and that card is loaded. So really, the Invicta FC cards are not to be missed. Those cards are awesome. Really, the promoters behind that promotion do a really good job of promoting first-class mixed martial arts. And really, all the women are very talented. It's really going to be a spectacular show, and it's free. I mean, really, there's no excuse if you're a diehard MMA fan why you should not see that card. It's stat top to bottom, and it's free streaming on our website October 6th. Please check that out. It'll be Sarah Kaufman versus Caitlin Young in the co-main event.
And was that the same card Michelle Watterson's making her comeback too?
Correct, yep.
Here locally,
sure
yes. She'll be back after, I guess, almost a year of inactivity. Next up, we have a very popular fighter, especially out in the West Coast, by the name of Abner Mares. He'll be fighting a tough veteran fighter in Anselmo Moreno. That's officially set for October 27th on Showtime. Mares is going to be defending the Super Bantamweight title there in Southern California, in Anaheim. So it's going to be a pro Abner Mares crowd that day. The fight was originally going to be held on October 13th. That had to be pushed back because of just a matchup with the HBO card. So it should be pretty interesting to see that. Moreno is for people who don't know who he is, he's Panama-born, and he's actually, his residence is there too. He's 33-1. Guy doesn't have much power. Out of his 33 wins, he only has 12 knockouts, but this guy gets the job done. The last 5 guys he's fought, their combined record is something like 128-6. So, I mean, he's fought some tough competition and easily defeated a tough Vic Darchinyan in California, in the United States, which is difficult to do against Vic. So a pretty tough fight for Abner. Will it set him apart from the rest of the crew there? No, not really. I mean, Moreno is moving in weight to challenge him, so it's an interesting matchup, however, to see how Mares fares against a veteran. And also, this past weekend, for those of you that missed it, the Showtime had a pretty good card between Fidel Maldonado and Michael Perez. Again, Fidel Maldonado is a top prospect here from Albuquerque in boxing. He lost a very close split decision. I say very close, but one of the judges disagreed with the rest of America, that he had the score 97-92 in favor of Michael Perez. It was a very close fight. The other scores read 94-95 and 95-94. So very close fight in the minds of most, at the exception of one judge. Fidel Maldonado won a couple of the early rounds. Really struggled in the middle rounds just because of his inactivity. But in the last round, he was able to drop Perez. And if there were another 20 seconds left on the clock, he would have stopped him. So Perez was saved by the bell. And, he went on to win that fight. He now moves to 17-1. Unfortunately, Fidel drops to 13-2. And we know how tough it is for a prospect to come back from 2 consecutive victories. So we'll definitely see how this changes Fidel Maldonado's work ethic. I mean, I don't think it'll do much because I actually thought he squeezed the fight out, but definitely interesting to see how he translates from here.
You mentioned Jorge last week with Maldonado. That was a very important fight with both prospects, with him and Perez. Him losing, where's his path now? Does he kind of does he start at the end of the line and just kind of work his way back up again? I mean, does it take maybe 2 years to get another televised fight on national TV, or because he's had, some well-known appearances on Showtime and on the Spanish-speaking networks, he can kind of work his way back into the spotlight again with some couple of wins?
That's a good victory. I think with a couple of wins, he can work his way back to the spotlight. He is a Golden Boy fighter still, and there's no sign that Golden Boy is actually going to let him go anytime soon. So definitely with them behind him, and the Spanish networks behind him, I think you'll definitely see him on TV again, especially how he rallied in that fight. Even the Showtime commentators were very impressed by when he decided to turn it up a notch. The last 2 rounds, he really did in that fight. So I think we'll definitely see Maldonado back again.
No doubt. Let's talk about a person that's on the road back to recovery, and that's George St. Pierre. He's been officially medically cleared to compete, and the bout's official at UFC 154 between Carlos Condit and George St. Pierre. I know, Jorge, you've been doing a good job of getting a lot of content just talking about Carlos Condit's bout with George St. Pierre. GSP just had a blog on Facebook just thanking his doctors. Seemed very happy to get his 9 months of rehab complete, and he's ready for his bout against Carlos Condit November 17th, which is my birthday. So I'm very pumped about that fight. That card's looking particularly loaded, so knock on wood, hopefully there's no injuries, everything goes smoothly, and we see an awesome card in Montreal, because I think you and I think we're in the minority that I think we really think Carlos Condit can pull this upset off. So hopefully, whether or not Carlos Condit wins, that fight is spectacular. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Yeah,
but definitely. And also, there's word going around about who Marcus is possibly fighting next. There's reports that apparently a Pacquiao versus Marcus 4 fight is a pretty, almost a done deal for December. But we're also hearing that Marcus is interested in fighting Bradley. I don't think there's many people out there that want to see a Bradley Pacquiao rematch over a Marcus Pacquiao, but the fight people are talking a little bit more about is a Marcus Bradley, and if Marcus were to come off victorious off of that, then the 4th match with Pacquiao. So it's very interesting to see how that actually will work out. Boxing Scene actually had an interview with Fernando Beltran, who's a Zanfer Promotions go-to guy. That's Marcus's independent promoter now. That it's close to materializing is what they titled it. So little by little, who knows, it's going to develop. They're hoping for the beginning of December. Who knows, neither guy would be ready by November. So it would definitely be interesting to see how it turns up and who's next. Pacquiao's lost a little bit of steam since, losing, controversially, of course, that fight against Bradley. So, hey, we'll play it by ear, and hopefully they'll make, something interesting out of this.
No doubt. John Jones is once again back in the news, and not for the right reasons. This was a blog on Bloody Elbow from a recent article from the Wrestling Observer that Dave Meltzer writes, longtime MMA pro wrestling journalist. He had a very interesting tidbit about the whole John Jones Chael Sonnen feud. This is actually a quote from an article saying, quote, John Jones was very upset after Chael began calling him out and mocking him on Twitter, going as far as to contact White and ask him to tell Chael to stop. Very interesting words. It seems like John Jones can't take the heat from Chael Sonnen, and there's rumors that even possibly UFC kind of spurred this feud between Chael Sonnen and John Jones themselves. So it's very interesting just to see, John Jones not really having a thick skin. And I think probably was one of the main reasons why he turned down a Chael Sonnen fight is because he doesn't respect Chael and doesn't like him. I mean, John Jones and Anderson Silva kind of have I would call a friendship, a kinship, because, of their high-profile status as champions. And certainly the feud between Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva, I don't think makes John Jones respect Chael Sonnen anymore. So, honestly, this is not really helping John Jones's image. I think there's a pizza joint, somewhere that has a pizza that is named, the John Jones special that's made of, wine and cheese, something like that. Just kind of a play on words. Just totally making fun of chicken and cheese. There it was. Yeah. They're totally making fun of John Jones. So the public bashing continues of the current light heavyweight champion.
Well, how much does that hurt him even more, though? To actually, in a way, he's a tattletale now.
Yeah, man. We're going to talk about his public image in a second, but as long as he keeps winning, I think that's the main thing in order to keep John Jones relevant. If you win, and if you have the bad guy image and people don't like you, that means people want to see you compete either way, whether they hate you or like you. But, John Jones goes on a 2-fight losing streak. This reputation could come back to haunt him, so we'll see what happens. So, man, let's go, 2 rounds since it's just me and you, man. Mm-hmm. I guess I'll start first. I want to talk about the new Ultimate Fighter. I'm a big fan of FX. I'm a TV junkie. I just watch FX just because I think it's a pretty decent network. Even before UFC got on there, I watched Sons of Anarchy. I watched The Shield on there. There's tons of good movies on there. There's a really good network. So when the Ultimate Fighter aired and when the UFC deal came to fruition and started to go on FX, and I thought, we'd see a lot more UFC content on there. But it was a funny thing, watching the week leading up to the Ultimate Fighter, and the same week was the UFC Primetime special. And that during that entire week, I had no idea they were doing a UFC Primetime special with John Jones and Rashad Evans. Mm-hmm. And when the Ultimate Fighter actually went on, I didn't know the Primetime was even happening until midway through the first episode of the Ultimate Fighter. And then that's when the John Jones Rashad Evans special aired, 30 minutes after the Ultimate Fighter. So my point is that this new season of the Ultimate Fighter is happening, and to me, the really, I guess you can call it possibly a failure so far between the Fox and UFC relationship is this bad promotion. I just think, this new season, once again, is on a Friday night. Their demographic is 18 to 34 males. 18 to 34 males like to chase women, drink, and go out. They don't want to be stuck at home just watching the Ultimate Fighter with unknown guys on there. And I just think currently, with this promotion model that they're using, I just think it's the wrong move, and I think it's an easy correction for the UFC to make. So I'm just really just shocked that we have another season of the Ultimate Fighter, this on a late night, this on a terrible night, and I'm just wondering why the UFC just continues to make these easy mistakes. I have no idea why.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to go off here a little bit on what we spoke about earlier, prospects fighting, and what certain promotions, when they might favor one of the prospects. I don't know if most people notice this, but Bernard Hopkins, who is clearly affiliated and associated with Golden Boy Promotions, he's one of their, right-hand mans there. He was seen in the locker room with Michael Perez before his fight with Fidel Maldonado out of Albuquerque. So, what I wanted to go off here just a little bit is how and why these organizations would want to favor one prospect over the other, not knowing their futures at this point. Just very interesting, maybe seeing which one might be more marketable, but it just didn't make sense to me for one of the go-to guys for the organization to be seen in one of the locker rooms. I understand that, Michael Perez might be from, the New England area, and, we know Hopkins is from the Philadelphia area, and they're not too far from Jersey, so maybe he has a relationship with the guy, but you got to remain professional, and even at the end of the fight, he went immediately to Michael Perez's corner instead of just remaining neutral. It was very strange and just got people thinking, like, who was really to win this fight. And it got people thinking a lot when one of the scorecards read 97-92 in the West Coast, where you'd think people would favor Maldonado because, the fight was happening in Southern California. Just a little bit food for thought when it comes to that.
No doubt, yeah. I saw Bernard Hopkins after the fight in the corner. I thought it was kind of weird too, especially since these guys were prospects so early in their career. Just him automatically just taking sides like that. So, man, let's talk about your interview with Austin Trout. We have audio with that now. And Jorge, I want you to kind of explain. Last week you talked about Carlos Condit and Austin Trout trained together. What can we expect from your interview with Austin Trout last weekend?
Well, he was in town. Again, it was a media blitz of Albuquerque. He's in a town that only has about, 75, 80,000 people. He's in the El Paso metropolitan area, but because he's New Mexican, the El Paso media tends to be a little reluctant to actually cover this guy. So every once in a while, maybe a couple of times a year, he'll drive up here to Albuquerque and do all his media interviews in 2 days. So this basically what we covered is his possible fight next month against Roberto Garcia, who's a top 5 contender for his belt, and also just, what he learned from Carlos Condit. It was the first time the two guys ever met, which is pretty strange to me. 2 world champions in the same state, and, they're in the same city every once in a while. And it just basically he discussed with us how he benefited from hanging out with Carlos and what Carlos actually asked out of him. So a little bit of a strategy there also being talked by Austin Trout.
So here's our interview with Austin Trout.
Here with WBA Super Welterweight Champion Austin No Doubt Trout. You wrapped up your trip, your media blitz of Albuquerque, New Mexico. How did it go?
It was wonderful. Like always, Albuquerque shows love. They really putting Cruises now. Cruises gonna have to step their game up as far as support goes. But it was a great time. I got to talk to good media, especially got to come to see you. So it makes that success all on its own.
We're here at the world famous Jackson's MMA gym and center of Albuquerque here. What did you know about the gym ahead of time, and how was it to finally step foot inside of it?
Actually, I've came here before. I wasn't here at this place, but years ago I came and sparred a long time. I was still an amateur, as a matter of fact, and of course I knew about Jackson's gym. It is world known, so I knew that they produced a lot of champions in there, and finally getting to go in there and I could just feel the energy. I was telling Carlos that no one's in here right now, but I can still just feel the energy of fighters. It's crazy.
How was it to actually see his work ethic and then him, the two world champions in there? He's, of course, UFC welterweight and then former WEC.
Yeah.
The two just world champions in two different sports at their top of their level and in their prime together in here. Just training together.
Now that he's gone, I can act like a little stupid. Like, that was Carlos Condit. Always training. He asked me for advice. Can you believe it? It was surreal. I kept it cool, I think. I kept it pretty
cool. You kept it cool.
And, but it was a great experience. Like, I'm honored to be able to be in the same gym and work with him and to have him ask me for questions.
Now you're trying to stay busy here within the ring. At the end of September, you might have a fight against Garcia, who's, the number 4 ranked for your belt?
That's right.
I guess, what is it? You have to fight someone in the top 10 or top 15? How does that work?
You have to be ranked in the top 15 to defend your title. He's ranked 4. So, it's not a elite fight that I want to take, but it's still a good step forward, I think.
And what are you hoping for by the end of the year, or are you hoping to start 2013 with that bang?
I pray that we can get 2 more fights, one in September, one in December. Hopefully by December I can get another belt. That's the goal for this year, is to get another belt. If not, we can look forward to 2013 and to really just push hard in 2013. I'm kind of scraping this year together, trying to get something great happening for this year. But next year, definitely gonna put some big things on the table.
Also, while you were here, you sparred against Joaquin Zamora and Hector Munoz, 2 tough veteran, old school guys from the Albuquerque area. How did that go at Team Tapia?
It was good. It was fun. It was a great show out. I wanted to shout out to everybody that came out to Tapia's gym yesterday. Shout out to Hector and Joaquin for the work. It was good work. Hector, he keeps coming, and Joaquin, he's a tricky veteran. So, I had to do a lot of thinking and working that day.
There's a fight in your division that's happening in September. Cito Lopez and Canelo Alvarez, surprising fight, just because everyone thought K9 was going to get that fight.
Yeah.
What do you see of that, and what are you hoping to get out of that? Do you think Canelo will is Floyd next for him, or do you hope it's you?
I hope it's me. I think they're trying to, bait him up for Floyd. I think Josecito Lopez is going to put up a good fight, though. I don't think he's just going to lay down. He's a tough kid. But I don't think he's big enough to do anything as far as, hurt Canelo. So, it's going to be a good fight for as long as it lasts. Yeah. After that, hopefully, I'm still going to keep beating that drum to try to get that fight. I want to be the one to take his O away. I want to make that O go. So hopefully they can get me in there. Depending on his performance, I think it would be, if he has a bad day, they're not going to give him the floor. Maybe they'll give him me. So I hope Jose can be a little spoiled.
And then finally, a message to either Albuquerque or your fans, just in general.
Just, I'm going to have to say shout out to Albuquerque. Thank you guys for showing so much love this weekend. I'll definitely be back sooner than later. And, shout out to all New Mexico. Your 4th world champion in the building and ready to get another title.
Yep. Albuquerque, Las Cruces, El Paso area, just the entire Southwest and the U.S. paying attention to this guy. He's going to do big things. Awesome No Doubt Trout, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching, you guys. I'll catch you guys later.
So, Jorge, seems like Austin Trout's pretty much enjoying life as champion. Could you compare him kind of not really being in the spotlight as a champion in New Mexico compared to Condit and John Jones and even Holly Holm? Austin Trout's kind of, laying, in the weeds, kind of really not that many people know about him. Is that a benefit to his career? He doesn't have that pressure of all of New Mexico kind of being behind him?
I think in a way not having that attention, it kind of hurts him because people, they know he's dangerous based off of his record and who he's been able to beat. But, anyone can do this. Do a Yahoo or Google search for a fight, or even try to YouTube Austin's fights. You'll only be able to find maybe 2 fights. The last fight that was on Showtime, or the last couple of fights that were on Showtime, and then maybe one from the middle of his career. So it's just very difficult for people to even find tape on him and see exactly how he's able to perform. When it comes to New Mexico standards, as you mentioned, people like Carlos Condit, Holly Holm, they're known more over him and have more notoriety than he ever would, because I think of where he's from. Might be a couple of things too. I think race plays an issue a little bit, especially in this state where you have such a large demographic and percentage of Hispanics and whites here. Being African American, I think it kind of hurts Austin. And I'm just being honest here. If he were Hispanic living in Albuquerque, this guy would be just a media phenomenon here. And it's a little sad that he's in such a small town, and then the large metropolitan area near him, which is El Paso, which is bigger than Albuquerque, isn't really paying too much attention to him, despite the fact that he was born there and only living 30, 40 minutes outside of the city. So he's in a very difficult spot, but I think ultimately his talent will prevail him and bring him up. And I think over time, as people see him more on TV and know that he's New Mexican, especially the culture that we have here, Jay, and how dear we hold that New Mexican culture to us, I think ultimately people are going to embrace him no matter what race the guy is.
Yeah, man, I completely agree with you. I think as he gets more high-profile wins and starts working up the ladder, I think it's just a matter of time where Austin Trout is, immediately into that New Mexico spotlight. I mean, he's very charismatic. He's very good with the media. He has a lot of swagger. I think he has all the tools to really be somebody that any New Mexican can kind of root behind very easily. So I think just give it some time. It may be taking longer than normal because of those drawbacks you mentioned. But I think in due time he can fulfill his potential here. Let's talk about another star kind of in the spotlight, and particularly John Jones's public image. We kind of talked about UFC 151 last week. I want to break down John Jones's this public persona, because it's been taking a huge hit within the last really couple of months. I mean, it all started with the little Machida comments about not wanting to fight him because Machida was the fight that really did not get him the most pay-per-view, didn't make him the most amount of money. So first he got in trouble for that comment, and then of course this whole UFC 151 debacle, and now the latest story about him ducking Chael Sonnen and not wanting Chael to talk trash about him, and also overall about Jones is very religious and he gets criticized for that. So I want to ask you, Jorge, this first claim that we've heard from really the media and from fans. Do you think him being portrayed as a coward by the UFC and the media is fair? Because the UFC, Dana White said that John Jones and Greg Jackson are killing the sport, and then they go into a press release further kind of ruining John Jones's name. So is this the right course of action for the UFC, for them to portray their biggest champion as a coward?
It's, I think, and to quote Pat Miletich, what he said earlier this week is that it's organizational suicide for the UFC to trash their main guy. And it's I don't understand how you'd go, trying to promote an individual or an event by just completely bashing him. To attack someone's, character is a lot different than attacking their skill. And, something Dana rarely does. I mean, he never says that, oh, he's a terrible fighter. He'll call people out for not having a good fight. Oh, that fight sucks, he'll say. But to actually attack someone's character, I mean, that's completely, the opposite of what you're taught in school to do when you're trying to promote a product. You're not going to bash your product if you're trying to sell it, and it's completely incorrect the way they're actually going about this. But if they're trying to build this, and I doubt this is a scheme that Dana White has to try to build this up, but if they're trying to have this polarizing figure as John Jones, because the UFC doesn't really have that guy as champion, someone who's champion that everyone just absolutely hates. I mean, you could think of some guys. Bisping's not the biggest crowd favorite and people dislike him. I guess Hardy's another one. Carlos Condit's now one of those guys, and a lot of those Jackson guys are starting to become that actually. But I guess even and then Koscheck comes to mind. One guy that people hate. This guy's booed all the time when he's doing his post-fight interviews. So for the UFC to be going that route, it's just very interesting and just something we've never seen before. So if it is a marketing ploy, it's something we've never seen. And, hopefully it doesn't backfire on them, especially with MMA going, I guess, now into the mainstream here within the past couple of years.
Man, I think John Jones reminds me a lot of LeBron James. I think, it's hard to hate John Jones just from his personality. You talk to him, it's kind of hard to hate the guy. Whether you talk to Josh Koscheck or Michael Bisping, you probably think he's a jerk. That's just a personality. So no matter how hard the UFC tries to portray John Jones as the bad guy, ultimately you're not going to get the entire MMA fan base to hate him. It's just not going to happen. It's just like with LeBron James. Once he got his ring, it's all good. All is forgiven, and pretty much the majority of sports fans either tolerate LeBron James or like him again. Everybody kind of forgets that. I think in terms of his image, I think I agree with you. The UFC portraying him as a coward and just kind of bad-mouthing him as stupid, but I don't think it's going to really hurt them, their bottom line. I just think as long as John Jones is winning, I think controversy is going to sell. I mean, the famous wrestling promoter Eric Bischoff, his book was called Controversy Creates Cash, and that's true with John Jones. I mean, as long as he keeps winning, there's going to be an interest in how John Jones is perceived, either if you like the guy, if you want to see him lose, or if you hate him. So ultimately, I think it's not really a marketing tactic. I just think it's Dana White being emotional. I mean, look at what he did with Loretta Hunt. Look what he did with the ESPN journalist, with the video blogs. He's very emotional. He gets very upset. Instead of just taking a walk and just, taking a breather and just cursing out, Joe Silva for a second, he goes on a media outlet and just lets loose. I mean, he doesn't really he talks without thinking. He just doesn't think about the consequences, and I think that's just his personality. But overall, I want to ask you, Jorge, do you think John Jones needs some media training? He was very quiet when, the whole MMA world was bashing him, and yet he put some posts on Twitter. He has one interview with MMA Junkie. He's very quiet. So do you think Jones needs this media team behind him? Jordan Breen went nuts on another MMA show. Jordan Breen, an MMA writer, he went ballistic, just saying, how does this guy not have any media training? It's insane. He has this deal with Nike. He's the #1 UFC star. I mean, why doesn't he have a media team pretty much telling him how to talk, how to walk, how to really do anything he does in the public eye?
I completely agree with you. So there's a couple of things that I think he should have done. A couple of days after I was just, I was surfing his webpage there on Facebook, and he posted something on his timeline, something, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. It's a tattoo that he has, some Bible verse. I'm sorry, I'm not the religious type, Justin. But just the amount of negative, comments that he actually received for posting that. I mean, people saying, yeah, like ducking Chael Sonnen, and it was just crazy. And I think he definitely does. It's like, you got to kiss, when something goes down like that, you got to kiss some butt. Do a bunch of giveaways, do whatever you have to try to get people back on your side. And for him not to come out and have an actual statement or something, it surprised me as well. You're the top guy, you're one of the top guys, one of the top 3 guys in this sport. You definitely need the media training. And I think that should go for any other guys who are champions or seriously trying to take this sport into consideration. He's not a dumb guy by any means. He's a smart dude. It's just when the pressure came on him, he didn't know how to react, and it basically seems to most people like he's crying, like he's complaining. He's going back to the guy who belittled him in the first place, and Dana White, and asking him to tell other people to stop picking on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. But I want to ask you another question, Jorge. Mm-hmm. We saw a lot of these old school fighters, Vitor Belfort. We saw a couple of other kind of, the guys from the old MMA guards pretty much saying, oh, back in my day, I would never pull out of a fight. Is there kind of a disconnect between the older generation of MMA and the new generation of MMA? I mean, the old school, mentality was, you just fight because you love the sport and it's a hobby. You're not basing it for in a career. I mean, Tank Abbott, he made a good amount of money, but certainly he was getting no deals from Nike. I mean, the same goes for Ken Shamrock or Horace Gracie or any of the legends of the past. So why does the old MMA guard seem to not understand the new creation of MMA economics? I mean, a lot of these guys have sponsorships on the line. They make a lot more money. I mean, Yola Machida has a good point. I mean, he's fought for the title several times now. I mean, if he loses one more time, he might never get an opportunity to fight for the belt again if he loses. So he might have to move to another weight class, which is a massive decision. So why do you think these old MMA fighters are so quick to criticize the new school?
I think it's because of the fact the sport evolved so quick. It's similar to, you think of football back from the 70s, and now, they're making the sport safer. They're protecting these guys and protecting their product. And over the past, I'd say maybe 6-7 years, MMA just took off, and it evolved within those same years. The amount of time it took the other sports, baseball, basketball, football, 30, 35 years to actually evolve. And it was a lot quicker, and it's something that these guys don't understand. These guys that were fighting 15, 17 years ago when it wasn't mainstream and they weren't making as much money and the world didn't have as much vested interest in it. So now these guys are trying to protect their image. John Jones, most of all, he's the one guy who, out of all people, should be considered, looking out for his image. I brought this up before. I got a buddy who interns with The Source, and when he approached John Jones's team about doing an interview for The Source magazine, they immediately said yes, that we're trying to get this guy a better image with, just the general public and the inner city as well. So they're trying to branch out to everybody, and John Jones is out there just not necessarily being selfish. He's protecting, I think he's protecting the sport by showing the integrity that these guys do have. And despite the fact that it is not this old school style of I'll fight anyone anywhere, it's not the same. This sport evolved too fast at the right time. I think it caught up to all the other sports.
No doubt. I want to talk about more high stakes in combat sports, and particularly with Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. I think the sport no doubt took a hit by Timothy Bradley pulling off the upset victory over Manny Pacquiao. And I want to ask you, Jorge, and I wish Will was here to kind of talk about this too. The sport now in boxing just seems, so hollow if you're just a casual fan. So I want to ask you, where does the sport go from now? Where does the sport point to for big money fights? Because that's what seems to be the business model. It seems like, whenever there's a Mayweather fight or a Pacquiao fight, that's where boxing gets its most attention from. And now with Pacquiao losing, there's really only one star remaining. So does it go to Canelo? It's September 15th, a coming out party for Canelo Alvarez, where if he destroys Josecito Lopez, all of a sudden he's up there with Floyd Mayweather, even though Canelo is very young in his fighting career. Or maybe we hold back and Mayweather is the only star. So where does top-ranked Golden Boy go from here in promoting the next big star in boxing? What happens now?
That's a very good question. The next big star in boxing is going to be Canelo, and I might surprise you with this one. I think it might be Chavez Jr. if he pulls off a pretty big victory next weekend in Las Vegas against Sergio Martinez. Think of this. This is a fight that I think is, pretty possible in happening and will be the next big pay-per-view draw about a year down the road. We got Chad Dawson against Andre Ward, the last gold medalist from the United States in boxing. He's fighting Chad Dawson. He pulls that victory off. Chavez pulls off the victory against Martinez and is just riding a huge high. This guy walks around heavy as it is, so if he moves up one weight class or fights Andre Ward at a catch weight, that's potentially the next big huge fight. The winner of that automatically becomes a superstar and outshadows Canelo in the meantime. Canelo's still very young. He's only 22 years old. He still has time to build himself up. But I think if a fight with Andre Ward and Chavez Jr. were to happen, they automatically become the king of the crop and the pay-per-view draw. The only thing that hurts them is there in those higher weight classes where, in MMA, the 170 pounds, that's a pretty exciting division. When it comes to boxing, these guys are a little more tactical and a little more technical when it does come to that weight class. You don't see these devastating knockouts you might see in the lower weights or in the heavyweights, for instance. So that's where I think that it might go. And Chavez Jr., I mean, fortunately for him, he has the name of his father, one of the greatest boxers of all time, in Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. So it's very interesting to see how that actually plays. And if Chavez is able to pull off this victory against Martinez, who's the third-ranked pound per pound behind Pacquiao and Mayweather, but doesn't draw enough money or doesn't draw enough attention, but has a superior skill set, I think Chavez Jr. will be right now the next the next big star in boxing. Because look, Canelo's fighting Josecito Lopez. Lopez has moved up about 3 weight divisions in the past 3 years. I think this is his limit. I don't think he'd be able to go any higher than this. So it's going to be very difficult for Canelo to establish himself as, dominant when he's fighting a guy that's fighting 2 weight classes out of where he typically does. So that's what I think is holding Canelo back a little bit. If you get a Canelo and a Miguel Cotto fight here next year, I think that'll help Canelo tremendously.
Is that realistic? Will Miguel Cotto take that fight?
I think so, because of he's not going to get what he get for Mayweather, but the next large pay-per-view draw, unless him and Pacquiao fight again, it's going to be Canelo, just because he's going to be a household name here. And think about it, Canelo, he's the type of guy that people in Mexico, in his home country, watch as much as the national soccer team. And that's huge for, this sport, one guy to mean as much as the entire sport of soccer in a country. So it's going to be very interesting to see. But Cotto, 2 potential fights that'll make each guy, Canelo and Chavez Jr. Chavez against Andre Ward, and then we have Canelo Alvarez against Miguel Cotto. Both guys become victorious off of that. Who knows, if Canelo decides to move up in weight, him and Chavez go at it. I think each guy makes $10 million in that fight.
Really? I see Canelo has more swagger and more of a presence to him than Chavez Jr.? Am I wrong about that?
No, you're completely right. Especially the way, here's the thing with Canelo. Women love him, men want to be him. That's exactly what it is. It's just he's different. He's not the typical looking I'm Mexican. I mean, he looks Irish. He punches like George Foreman. He's just not the average Mexican.
He looks like Wayne Rooney.
And he looks like Wayne Rooney. I mean, he's 3 people in one. So, yeah, no, you're completely right about him. He's just something else. He's a physical specimen as it is. This guy is a tree trunk, and he's only 22 years old. And for him to have all this publicity, there's no way it's going to go down, especially if he keeps winning. He's just going to become larger than life, I think.
So who has more box office potential between Chavez Jr. and Andre Ward? I mean, Andre Ward is not exactly an exciting fighter, and Chavez Jr., I mean, in my eyes, is not really too well known yet among casual boxing fans compared to, maybe Oscar De La Hoya back in the day or Shane Mosley. So can Chavez Jr. be a huge box office attraction just based on his last name, or there has to be something else attached to him to make him more marketable?
I think if he continues with this route that he's been on, his last 3-4 fights have won by KO or TKO. If he continues on this little run that I definitely think so. And a knockout over Sergio Martinez, who has been untouchable for the past 10 years, it'd be huge. I think it would launch him just on the verge of superstardom. I mean, it won't break him through, but with that last name and a devastating victory next weekend, what helps him is that this fight, him and Martinez, is the matchup of the year. There's no doubt about it. It's the biggest fight of the year in boxing, not necessarily with names, but when it comes to talent and the amount of animosity that's grown between these two guys 2 years. Martinez has been wanting this fight for 2 years. I don't know if you saw the face-off, but that was
not yet.
That was very intense between the two guys. I'd suggest that we'll put it up on our Facebook page there. But it was one of the most intense ones that I think I've ever seen, and it's going to be very interesting because each guy swore to knock the other one out, and there's a genuine dislike. I mean, it's not Mayweather in there with Mosley. These guys genuinely hate each other and just want a piece of each other at any time.
Very interesting. I think I'm sure all three of us will break down that fight next week. I'm really looking forward to seeing that matchup. And with Sergio Martinez, people kind of avoid him. If he wins, the future could be bright for him. Correct?
No, I definitely think so. For Martinez, he have a couple of big fights, and the thing about Sergio Martinez, he's able to move in weight, so he can fight for anywhere from 150 pounds at a catch weight all the way up to 154, where he's been champion, and 160 pounds, where he was previously champion as well. So this guy can easily fluctuate between 12 pounds, and in boxing, that's quite a feat. It's not like MMA, where these guys are used to having those large gaps. It's pretty difficult for some of these boxers to get used to and make those weights, but it's pretty easy for Martinez to actually do that within 2-3 weight classes.
Mm-hmm. I want to shift and talk about the new Ultimate Fighter, man. I remember talking to you about this last season, and you weren't really too into it. So what about this season? You have Shane Carwin, you have Roy Nelson. There's already been some rumors, some stuff coming out this season about Dana White not getting along with Roy Nelson. They already had a contentious relationship, and now that they're spending 3 days with each other each week, I'm sure that the relationship's not really improving. So with that tension between Dana and Roy Nelson, and Shane Carwin and Roy Nelson, will that bring you back and watching this season at all? It's not live. It's a taped format. It's welterweights. Are you more intrigued, or are you still of the mindset of, I'll just watch the finale in December?
I think I'm on the fence about this. I think throwing Roy Nelson on there, it's going to be comical, I think. I personally like the guy. He cracks me up. The way he looks, the way he talks, the way he acts. I think he's a pretty entertaining guy. Shane Carwin, on the other hand, I haven't seen much personality out of him. I'm interested in seeing what type of person he actually is, and we'll see if that is actually even shown through here. But correct me if I'm wrong, I've never seen either guy say a bad thing about the other, right?
Not really. I think it was right now. I'm not really sure about this. Don't quote me on this, but I think there is some jazz back and forth about the steroid allegations that Shane Carwin faced a couple of years back from Roy Nelson. I'm sure he's going to want drug testing from VADA once the December fight goes down. So I'm sure once the season starts, there'll be some tension. Shane Carwin's more laid back, quiet. Roy Nelson's very outgoing personality. Wants the attention. So you're not down with the mullet or the big stomach at all? I mean, that's not going to bring you back.
Well, I mean, it might. I mean, he's, like I said, he's entertaining. I want to see what kind of crazy stuff he does on here. But if I watch and I'm watching 3 episodes and he doesn't eat somebody, then I'm gonna stop watching.
So what's going to bring you back to the show? Because some people, they love the reality drama, they love the the fighting. First season, even though some people hated it, what really created Chris Lieben was him destroying the door and Bobby Southworth pouring water on him in the front yard. And Josh Koscheck messing with them. There was Diego Sanchez just being kind of this unique dude. What that made those personalities stand out, and that they suffered some criticism for that. Well, the MMA masses were rewarded with their criticism, and last season it was very much like a sport. Pretty much all the guys were gentlemen. You had a comeback story. You had pretty much the guys just in the training room just going through their daily routine, and no one seemed to care. So what would make you watch the show more? Is it more that Jersey Shore drama, or do you want to see it more like a contender type of show, more treated like a sport?
I'd more treat it like a sport, because a contender series, you got to see those guys and how they struggled. You got to learn about their families. You got to even see their families at times during the show. So it made them more personable and just more easy to relate to. I mean, if I have a guy just talking about how he's trying to support his family back home, but you never see them, it's not intriguing me, and it's not bringing me into it, because that's the same exact story that everyone else has. It's just basically explain to me why your situation is the way it is if you are struggling. Not all people or all individuals who do participate in the sport of MMA and are professionals at it, have a struggling life, and I understand that. But I want more of this personality to come out and just whether it's seeing the guy's family or seeing how the guys are just away from the gym. I would like to see that. And I understand that it's difficult because you're trying to put all these guys and trying to keep them, from even getting in trouble. And that's why you throw them all in together.
But don't you need a villain though? Don't you need somebody to kind of root against, even if they're a crap fighter like Junie Browning or Jamie Yeager? They might be physically impressive or look good in the first couple of fights, but they're going to eventually lose in the finale. Don't you need those type of guys in the house? I mean, don't you need kind of your good guy and your bad guy to kind of build towards something? Because if not, you have two good guys fighting against each other. Unless you're a hardcore MMA fan, that's not really intriguing to somebody who's just flipping the channel on a late Friday night, is it?
I agree. I mean, you do need the drama. You do need your crazies in there, and it's going to build the views. I mean, definitely what the UFC is doing is not catering to the type of viewer that I am. And, by all means, if it's going to help drive the ratings. And
they did last season, and no one watched.
Yeah, and I guess you're completely right. And it's just like, I don't know what format they'll actually have to follow. I mean, they might be messing around with it just a little bit. They're going back and forth between, live and tape fights. And what do you think is going to help them the most? Live fights or taped ones? Or it doesn't really matter with MMA fans?
Well, the live aspect of it, I liked how both teams were into it. It's really more intense. I think what's missing from the season is commentary. I remember, watching The Ultimate Fighter for the first time and not knowing anything about mixed martial arts and just being a tough noob, as they like to call it, and just learning the ground game from just, watching no commentary at all. This would have been cool just to have, Randy Couture or even Joe Rogan. It doesn't have to be Mike Goldberg there. You can have John Anik. Just go over like the basics of MMA and what each guy's doing. Like, to me, when I was watching the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, there's a lot of times when Josh Koscheck was on the ground or Diego Sanchez was on the ground. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what was side control, half guard, full mount. I didn't know the submissions. It was very hard to track until the finale happened, until there was more UFC content on Spike TV and there was commentary, and Joe Rogan was walking people that were new to the sport through all the different submissions and the techniques. And I think with The Ultimate Fighter, with no commentary, I just think for new fans, it's just hard to get a grasp of the sport when it hits the ground, or even if they're clinching up against the fence and you don't know what's going on. It's you have no roadmap to watch the sport. If the fight goes longer than a minute, I mean, there's no context as to what you're watching if you're a new fan. So I think commentary would help a lot, in my opinion.
And that's a good point also, because a lot of the people that you're trying to, to bring on, MMA fans, even especially the hardcore ones, if you're trying to drive ratings, we know what websites to search to actually view these things where it's not going to, add to your advertising value. We'll go stream this stuff, elsewhere, whether it's YouTube or any of the other, I guess illegal websites that we know of. If you wanted the casual fan or, just a new fan to actually interact with it, as you mentioned, commentary is going to be huge for them. I mean, it brought you on, though. I mean,
it did. I mean, I was intrigued because Diego Sanchez was on the show, and he was from New Mexico. I mean, I wanted to give the sport a chance. I mean, I want to go into the whole backstory of how I got into MMA, but just real quickly, if the sport ever got on regular TV, I would give it a shot. And when I saw Diego Sanchez on there, I was like, wow, this dude's from New Mexico. Knowing us, there's not really that many Mexicans getting that much national attention, let alone on a reality show. So when I saw this dude on there, I was like, wow. And he's winning, and he's in the final, and you see him destroy Kenny Florian. You're like, wow, this is awesome. And then you learn about Jackson's camp, and the rest is history. So that really got me into MMA locally. So I think, just real quickly, I think the women's aspect of this, people have been suggesting maybe, Cyborg and Ronda Rousey coaching one of the seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, and then having them fight on a special UFC card and having them coach men. What do you think about that?
That'd be pretty interesting. I think it's fairly interesting when you do put women to train these guys, how much more, I guess, obedient they are. I don't know if it's the mom factor, Jay, or what, but I think you'd have a lot more discipline in that house, to be honest.
There was that one episode, we talked about it specifically, where Ronda Rousey went to the house to watch, I think it was John Jones and Rashad Evans, and no one
guys didn't know how to
at all.
act.
Yeah, everybody was quiet. No one wanted to talk to her. It was silence. It was like, watching a funeral or something. It's crazy. So I think it'd be that the dynamic would change dramatically. And certainly you would get that rivalry of Ronda Rousey and Cyborg hating each other. I think would bring in fans like you, Jorge, that perhaps are just tired of the show and want something fresh and new.
And I'm sorry, Jay. I just can't do it.
I think that's going to pretty much wrap up our show, man. Anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
Yeah, just one more point. There's a couple of changes to the Jackson's MMA series card. Pretty big and some pretty minor ones. We'll bring those and break those up at a more we'll follow suit when the news actually breaks. But specifically one that took place last night, Andrew Tennyson, who's a very tough guy out of the Jackson's MMA gym. He was supposed to fight Jerry Sano out of the Bushido MMA gym. And Jay, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Bushido MMA gym out of El Paso, Texas.
No.
But these guys are tough. I think they have a winning record against the Jackson's guys. They have one guy that's 3-0 against the Jackson's guys in these series or just in spin-off events. So they're a very tough gym, but unfortunately Jerry Sano, who defeated George Klein's last month in Gallup, New Mexico, he had to pull out of his fight. He's now being replaced by Greg Chavez, who's a local fighter also. So Andrew Tennyson, it was against Jerry Sano, was a highly anticipated fight just because of the talent of both guys. Tennyson is one of the better younger guys there at the gym for Jackson's. I mean, the guy has a 5-0 amateur record, and he's a pretty good guy on the ground and standing up. But unfortunately, that fight's not going to happen. And we'll break down and bring up all the other fights on our Facebook page or on swfight.com.
Yeah, no doubt. It's going to be a pretty much crazy week. Things pick up. Next week, definitely in boxing and MMA, both locally and nationally. So we'll just take care of some housekeeping things. As always, you can get in touch with our show through Facebook, through facebook.com/LowBlow podcast. Also through @LowBlow, and email the show through lowblow505@gmail.com. You can contact FightFans Radio through Facebook, through facebook.com/FightFansRadio, twitter.com/FightFansRadio, youtube.com/FightFansRadio, and ustream.tv, /channel/FightFansRadio. With the FightFans Radio social media accounts, you'll catch all their new shows. You'll catch just Twitter updates and when they're live. Please check that out. Just add them on your queue. Real easy. Takes 2 seconds to do. And you get updated on all the FightFans Radio network list of shows. So please check that out. And also check out our YouTube page at youtube.com/LowBlow505. So for Jorge Hernandez, I'm Justin Goodrum, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
This has been the Low Blow on FightFans Radio.